Hello friends, my name is Fanaticism and this is the start of a reading vlog. It is November 30th and 2021 has been an incredibly wild year. It had high highs and low lows, but also just like a ton of time in the middle that was not great health-wise for me or mental health-wise for me. So it just, this whole year to me feels so disjointed. One of the things that fell by the wayside for me as I got a new job was working two jobs for a while and like still getting integrated into this new job with like more responsibilities and was dealing with all of like the health stuff. Reading, what have I been reading over the last couple of months? I don't know how to answer that. I haven't been tracking my reading. I haven't been doing a ton of reading anyways, and what I am reading is not like stuff that I have a lot of feelings about or that I want to talk about. It's just like reading to disconnect, to unplug, and not necessarily to like review and discuss and pick apart. Even though I haven't been tracking, I did track partway through the year. I think I'm at like 55 on Goodreads, but I read another like 30 books after that for sure that I have at least jotted down somewhere. So I've surpassed my 52 books in a year goal, my 72 books in a year goal, and I could make it to my stretch goal of 100 books. And that's where this reading vlog comes in. It is an update, yes, to say I'm like here, good things have happened, not so good things have happened. But I am getting to a much better place. I'm feeling like inspired again to make content, to make TikToks, and to talk to people about books. I'm feeling like I want to read again, and I miss the things that I make. And so here we are, particularly because I kept thinking about how last year in December I did my reading 30 books in 31 days vlog project and how much I enjoyed that. Even though it was like a pretty intense project, I didn't really put a lot of pressure on myself, and I want to do that again. That's what this is. Rambling introduction aside, this is a reading vlog. I'm gonna try to read 30 books this month. I'm confident that I can do this. I'm excited. I'm excited to try and do this. I'm sitting here next to my bed on the floor of my room because this is where my TBR cart is, and this is full of books like the whole year that I didn't touch, but I cleaned it out yesterday and I went through my TBR shelf in my office and I pulled 30 books that I want to get to. So my main priority is just reading 30 books. Like that is the number one thing. I suck at TBRs, but I really want to focus on physical books that I own. I have borrowed some audiobooks that accompany these physical books from my library where they were available so that I could read in multiple formats, and I think that that will help, but I would really love to focus on physical books that I have. One of the highs of this year was that Book of the Month reached out to me to work with me, and they were so incredibly patient and understanding when I wasn't doing well, when I wasn't feeling well. And honestly, you guys know how much I love my Book of the Month subscription. I have been with them for 6 years, I think it is. So when they reached out to me this year to work with me, it was truly like such a highlight of my year. And it also means that I've got all of these Book of the Month books that I'm interested in reading. So I've got at least 10 here. Some of these books are books that I've started not finished. Some of them are arcs that I got a while ago and then I never got to. So it's a nice like mix of things here, and I'm going to try and pull primarily from these 30. But here are my like few exceptions and additions. One, I would like to read Pride and Prejudice and Jane Eyre before the year is through. Number two, I have been blazing through the In-Depth series by J.D. Robb, and this is one of those like, this is like part of what I've been reading in this like void of what am I reading is the In-Depth series, and to the point that they blend together. The storyline, I could not review individual books because the storylines blend together, and this is also an experience of like low lows and like, I wouldn't say like high highs, but like entertaining. I am getting attached to a lot of these characters, specifically the side characters, but each book is like super repetitive in like what it shares about the characters or whatnot. So reading it in a binge like I am, that becomes more apparent how like repetitive some of this stuff is, but also like I can't stop, won't stop. So I might read a few more in the In Death series. Like those might be audiobooks that I pepper in throughout this. So here we go. I was so happy and so optimistic yesterday about like this month and this project. I mean, I still am. It's just that yesterday after work, I had the worst migraine. I can usually feel them building, but I don't know. Yesterday, it was just like, it felt like a switch where after work, it just had this terrible headache and I had to like lay in the dark. I can't do anything. I can't look at anything. Sounds bother me. Light bothers me. So I'm literally just laying in the dark from like 6 p.m. But it got so bad, the pain and the pressure did, that it got me sick to my stomach, and it just was not a happy time. My final day in November ended up on a really bad note, and I woke up this morning and it like, it's like not a migraine anymore. It's like downgraded to a headache, but like this side of my, like it's still sore, like down my neck, my eyeball. These glasses are really, they're need to desperately be replaced. So I've just been wearing my contacts, but I couldn't even think about putting in a contact because like my eyeballs are sore right now. It's fine. Like I'm a lot better today. It's not putting this project off track. I just think it's really funny that yesterday I was like, I feel so much better now and I'm so happy and optimistic, and my body was like, LOL. I did get myself like a big honking Starbucks drink. They didn't put a straw in it, and the only straws I have at home are like boba straws, so it's fine. Caffeine usually helps with my migraines, so does sugar. So just, I did that. All of that said, yesterday I got a message from my friend Jess, who I met as part of like an in real life book club here in South Florida, who if you've ever been to BookNet Fest, you've probably seen or met Jess because I love putting her on romance panels. But she sent me this message and it reminded me about the Goodreads Choice Awards. So I went and I looked at specifically the romance category because I wanted to see what People We Meet on Vacation was up against. And I was surprised. I had read like the majority of them, and now I kind of want to finish off the ones I haven't read so I can do like a whole like ranking thing and review all of them. So in addition to the physical copies I showed yesterday, the few series that I'm working through, I'm also going to read some of these romances this month, in this next week actually. So this is why I don't do TBRs, because I'm always like, oh, what about these books over there? I've got 3 books that I am starting off with. One is Neon Gods, and it is part of the Goodreads romance category. I also want to review it over on TikTok because I did a review for the Scarlet St. Clair book that is a Hades and Persephone retelling. The name is escaping me right now, and somebody asked me like, well, what about Neon Gods? So it's been on my TBR list so that I can answer this question, and now it's on this Goodreads thing, so double whammy. I am listening to that one on audiobook, and then I picked 2 books from my TBR cart. One is like a short one that I think I can read pretty quickly so I can get like a head start on my count, and that is We Are Okay by Nina LaCour. And I received this book from Sam from Thoughts on Tomes. Our first Y'all Fest, maybe second Y'all Fest, she brought a suitcase full of books that she was going to give away, and like had a little meetup at the park where people could just come pick up books if they wanted to. And I saw this one and it was like, is this any good? She's like, I actually really enjoyed it, just not one that I want to hold on to or read again. So I was like, oh, I'll take it, small enough I can fit in my bag. That was years and years ago and I never read it. So this has been like long time on my TBR, but I do want to read it. And like I said, it's small enough and short enough that I think I can zip through it, and there's no reason for this to have been on my TBR for as long as it is. And then I picked a chunkier book that will probably take me longer, so I want to like start and read it in chunks in between other things. And this is a book of the month pick. It's Half Sick of Shadows by Sebastian. This was my June 2021 pick. So those are the 3 books that I'm going to start reading today, start working on, and hopefully this headache or this like lingering migraine soreness, whatever the hell it is, goes away and we can only go up from here. This is such a stupid update. I haven't read anything, but I don't know if in like my previous clips you saw how long my nails were. They were like super, super long, and I was already thinking about what my first set of like Christmas nails would be. But I got up to get a snack and I sat back down and I was like pushing myself back in my chair, but I like rammed my finger into my own leg. This has to be one of the most violent nail breaks I've ever experienced in my life. It's not like super bloody, but if you don't want to see a little bit of blood, move forward, move forward. But freaking, are you kidding me? It ripped. Oh my God, I saw stars. I'm sorry. This is the kind of thing I would bother coworkers with if we were in the same office, so you guys got to hear about freaking. Oh my gosh, I got so mad that it broke down on my skin that I just like, not all the way, but I cut the rest down. Stupid. Now I'm gonna like even them out a little bit, but ow. The reading update is a little bit weak. I am 20 pages into this and it's about loneliness so far. And this college age student is like spending, I have no idea what this book is about. I just realized as I was looking at the like description that I went into this just completely without knowing. But it's a college age student who has to spend basically the holiday break alone in her dorm. So it's giving me a lot of flashback vibes to being alone during pandemic and sort of a lot of like the feelings of like solitude and loneliness that she's experiencing and sort of like waxing poetic over are just like hitting me. This is gonna wreck me. I can tell. I can tell. So even though I was like, I'll just sit down and like blast through it, I read like 20 pages and I was like, need a break because I can already feel myself having all of the emotions. I also started Neon Gods and I listened to 2 chapters of that and just immediately better than the Scarlett St. Clair one. I should look up the title since I'm gonna keep referencing it. But why it's like immediately better is that it like A Touch of Darkness, the premise of it just immediately made no sense. And I get that the author wanted these characters in this sort of playground to play in, but the way that she got us there, honestly, all of the pieces of the world building just absolutely made no sense and was so frustrating throughout, specifically because the character decisions and motivations also made no sense and they were poorly characterized. So immediately Neon Gods feels a little bit better because at least like the world that she's setting up and the way that these characters tie to the like Greek gods, like that makes a little bit more sense. So that's fine. That's where I am with reading. But I wanted to tell you something else that is going on, and that is that I'm kind of living in squalor. Maybe squalor is a strong word, but I do have a mess. And that's because I brought out like all of my Christmas stuff and I was like, I'll put my Christmas stuff up, and I just haven't, and it's like all here, and like my leftover fall stuff is also just kind of hanging out. And then also I've bought all of my Christmas presents and they're just hanging out over there. They need to be wrapped and eventually put under the tree. I wanted to get this done like right after Thanksgiving, but I ended up buying like more Christmassy things like on Black Friday, so I wanted those things to get in, and then I was like, okay, by December 1st, but yesterday, not feeling great. Today I'm feeling like 95%, still a little bit sore, but most of the pain is gone. So I'm taking my lunch break to at least start going through this. Listen, I don't really want to listen to Neon Gods as I'm putting up a Christmas tree because that doesn't feel like it's not the vibe, right? But we'll see. I'll listen to something as I take my lunch break at least to start putting this together. And then I have to get back to work because I've got a bunch of interviews that I need to conduct this afternoon. But yeah, I'm going to try and start putting this I hate living like this. I hate mess. So this has been driving me a little bit batty. Okay, I'll give you the reading update first. I finished reading Neon Gods and I wasn't super impressed. I feel like there were 2 things working against this book, and one is really, really a personal taste thing, and the other I think is like a writing and quality thing. So the first thing is that I listened to this on audiobook. I borrowed it from my library and I hated it. the narrators a lot, not their normal speaking voices, but particularly when the Persephone narrator was doing the Hades voice, and when the Hades narrator was doing the Persephone voice, I could not stand it, especially Persephone doing Hades. The voice that she did for Hades was like the antithesis of sexy to me. It made me, oh, I'm kind of sick, honestly, listening to it. It was so bad in my ears. And so I was like, fine, I'll just get the ebook and I'll read it, but it was out and I just wanted to kind of be done with it. So I like stuck with it, but it wasn't a great choice because I did not like that at all. But on top of that, from like a quality and writing perspective, this was entirely way too long. I feel like it didn't have the story to justify the length of what this was, and like the stakes that it set up, like I didn't entirely buy into them, even though the premise of what was happening was fine. It was much better done than A Touch of Darkness, like I said. But as we went on and like it kept going, I was just like, I'm not buying what you're selling. At first, I enjoyed the relationship between Hades and Persephone, but I also feel like that was under-delivered on. It set things up very quickly, and so it just kind of became repetitive as it went on, and there wasn't any real like progression in their relationship. It just started immediately at this level, and it kind of stayed there. And in fact, I feel like in some places, like it dipped and under-delivered, especially like when it came to the spiciness of this romance or whatever. I feel like it set my expectations really high, but then when it came down to it, it was just like, It wasn't as bad as A Touch of Darkness, I will say that, because there was a little bit more here in terms of like world building and attempt at plot, and the characters at least both acted in ways that I felt were true to the characters, which none of that existed in A Touch of Darkness, but it still wasn't great. Like I would give this like a 2.5 out of 5 stars. So since I wrapped that romance book up, I picked another romance book from the Goodreads choice, and I started listening to 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I have listened to 6 chapters so far, and so far like I'm interested, and you can tell the quality of the writing is like much better than a lot of romance out there, but I'm also not like immediately hooked. It's 6 chapters in and I'm still not sure like kind of what the hook is here. I think we've met both of our main characters, but they're not together or even in the same place yet, so it's just a little bit slow going right now. So I also picked up the X Hex, which is also on the Goodreads list, and I have an hardbook copy, so I might just go back and forth between these two books. For other updates, I did finish putting out everything in the living room that I have, as well as my room. I put the few Christmassy things that I own that go in there in my room, and I ordered so many more Christmassy things and they're just shipping delayed at this point, which I should have thought of when I was like, oh, I'll just order it on Black Friday. Like I didn't think of it, and now all of my Christmas things are on a truck somewhere and not in my house. Will they get here before Christmas? It's a little bit of an exaggeration because it's only the 3rd, but I want it and I don't have it, but it's fine. This is cute. It's cute. Minimalist vibes are my vibes. I don't know why I suddenly feel like turning this place into a winter wonderland. I will be fine. I still have to put a few things out in my office, and also like a lot of the clutter that was out here is now just sitting in my office. But once I finish putting together my office, I can take the boxes and put them back in storage. And then this weekend, since I already cleaned my room and my bathroom and the living room, I just have to finish with the kitchen, the office, and the guest bathroom. I don't know why you guys want to hear about like the trials and tribulations of cleaning my apartment. And I was living in squalor for a little while, and I'm like going on this binge now, but that's the plan. Some reading, some cleaning. Okay, so I'm the worst. You would think this weekend would be the time that I did the most vlogging and reading, but I didn't. It all boils down, like I could tell you the million different things why, but it all really boils down to the fact that for 2 days I just didn't want to be perceived. I saw no one. I did not comb my hair. I slept a lot on Sunday. I wasn't feeling great, so I rescheduled my dinner with my friend, and we're doing that tonight. She should be here in an hour. But I did like stuff. I finished cleaning around the house. I set up a new bookshelf in the living room. It is primarily not because of like number of books that I have right now, even though I have way too many books. It was more of a decorative thing because I had like that empty space there, and I had my vertical shelf kind of tucked in the corner, but it wasn't like big enough to really fill the space it was in. So I bought like a not quite the same style but same color of bookshelf just to keep out there, and it's where I will now keep my Barnes & Noble's like leather bound editions, and I want to start collecting the Penguin cloth bound editions. I've always wanted them. I started my cloth bound collection as an early Christmas gift to myself, and I set up that bookshelf. Yeah, so, you know, hooray me. I did finish reading a second book, so all is not lost, but I finished reading 7 Days in June, and I love when I have this experience with a book, and I know for sure that I have said this before, but every time I try to think of examples, like they're gone from my memory, and I don't know how to keep track of them. But it is when I like have a moment of questioning the author, or like have a moment where I've like reached sort of my limit, or like I'm approaching the limit for something, and right as I like think to myself like, ugh, I have this question, or I wish we would move on, or whatever it is, like the author does it right at that point. It's so satisfying when the author like lands on those pacing beats so well, and that's exactly what happened with this book. Like my last update, I was like, I don't know if it's like getting kind of slow, like it hasn't really taken off, and as soon as I went back after that update, like the story took off. It was like right at that point that everything kind of coalesced, and like I really understood what kind of story we were getting into. And this is not, I don't know, this is not a book that after I finished reading it I was like, I would read that over and over again, but it is a book that I want to read at least one more time, because even though I knew it was a romance and a happily ever after was coming, I was so like stressed out for the characters. I was so much in my feelings for them that like the like where are we going and how will they end up together was at the forefront. And I kind of want to go back and just enjoy the writing and the characters and all of the other like relationships that surround our two main characters, because there's so much here about family and about mothers and daughters, and just about it is very well written and nuanced romance, and I really enjoyed it. I do think that it was a little bit slow in the beginning, and I also feel like it maybe wasn't long enough, like, and I don't know if that's coming from a place of me just like really enjoying it and being so invested in these characters that I wanted more, but the plot itself did feel a little thin, and I did feel like, I don't know, the way that it ended in sort of like an epilogue, when that really was the end of the story, that like threw me off a little bit. So overall I would give this like 4 or 4.5 out of 5 stars, but I really enjoyed it, and I have a feeling that if I read it again I would appreciate like the fullness of what the story was doing even more. So that is like one of my favorites so far on this list of Goodreads romances. And then I started the next one, which is the X Hex, and I've read 75 pages of this, so not too bad. I did do some reading. I'm not like super invested. I do like the main character so far, and sort of like her whole spiel and her grumpiness over the situation. But yeah, it's like going fine, and I feel like you can finish this off pretty quickly. And then I also, because I've been kind of avoiding going back to We Are Okay, because I was like, the first page is like loneliness, and I was like, oh no. So every time I pick it up I'm like, oh, my heart. So I don't know if that means that I'm not going to finish it or if I've just been putting it off, but because I was putting it off and I got like my physical copy books, my Goodreads books, the one thing that I realized like I had none of was nonfiction, and I had this hold come in from the library, so I started reading Cultish by Amanda Montell, and it's the language of fanaticism. So basically the language that is used around cults and just kind of exploring what exactly is a cult. This was recommended to me by somebody in YouTube comments, I think. I now that I've said this, I remember it being recommended to me and I have no idea where. I've listened to the first 13% of that, so these two things are what I will be finishing off next. We Are Okay. Maybe. I got boosted today. My arm is sore, but otherwise I'm not feeling any other symptoms. I only felt a little bit of fatigue after my first 2 shots, so I'm just hoping the pain at the injection site is like the only thing I feel. I finished listening to Cultish, and it was an interesting read. It was very easy to read, and I really liked the premise of like looking at the way that cults work and form, specifically through language and the language that is used to draw people in and keep them in sort of cults. That wanted to be the main idea, but there was also an additional element of how we define cults and like things that are cult adjacent and how they can be harmful, like these cultish things can be harmful, or like how they can be something that you put on or take on in specific spaces but are free to then like take off when you leave those spaces, and how much less harmful that behavior is. For instance, in like exercise like crazes or whatnot, how people get very invested, but it is something that they can walk away from, versus when it becomes something you can't walk away from, or that you receive like damage from the community if you try to walk away from. That's when it becomes something more nefarious. So all of those ideas were like really interesting, and I liked the accessible way that the author approached all of this. It felt like a Twitter thread or like an article that I would have read, you know, but like put together in something a little bit more long form. However, I think that that was also like, it made it easy to read and it made it enjoyable, but it was also a little bit shallow in sort of some of the things that was saying, and the argument was like a little bit one note, but there were a lot of examples. So I wouldn't go into it if you are somebody who is like super into cultish things. I wouldn't go into it expecting a lot of depth or even something very much more than what you've already like explored on your own. But for anybody who like loves language or likes like true crime or cult like things, I feel like this is a good intersection of like pop culture and linguistics, and so that made it enjoyable. Overall, I would give this like a 4 out of 5 stars. Now that I finished Cultish, I want to like replace that with another nonfiction book, because I feel like this, all I've been reading is romance. Everything else that I picked up that was not romance, I have not finished. Kind of okay with it because the Goodreads finalists are being announced on the 9th, and I want to finish off these like romance books, so maybe I'll focus on that with like a nonfiction book in the rotation, and then once that's all done I can kind of go back to my physical TBR and some of those other things that I wanted to read. So that means that I have the rest of this left, then the Soulmate Equation, and the Spanish Love Deception, which I actually started months ago because it's like a TikTok thing, so I was going to read it as part of like my, you know, reading and reviewing TikTok faves, and I got to 34% and I totally just like stepped away because I was like, I can't deal with this, but I'm going to try and power through. I just saw that it was 479 pages. Jesus, oh my God. I'm gonna try. But even if I can't and I just end up like really truly DNFing it, I feel like that's enough information to go on for the project that I want to do. So anyways, I'm gonna try and get through that, the Soulmate Equation, the X Hex, and then I will be done with the Goodreads romance finalists. I did it! I finished this book last night for a total of 4 books for this reading vlog, which is so great. Feeling very accomplished, and I did end up really liking this, surprisingly. Only surprisingly because I had heard mixed things. I generally do well with Book of the Month books. I don't tend to have a problem with them. They always land between 3 and 5 stars for me, and this one I would give like 3.5 out of 5 stars, maybe even like close to 4, because I thought that it did what it set out to do really well. It was entertaining, it was romantic at points, it was just, all of the vibes here were incredibly strong. If you are coming in for the supernatural element, I think that might be a little bit weak here to just kind of stand on its own. This is first and foremost a romance book, but if I went into it expecting a romance book and was pleasantly surprised by how strong sort of the supernatural plot was, and like all of the surrounding details and the supporting characters. Supporting characters in romances tend to be a little bit one note, and not that these were like super nuanced, but they felt like rich, and I enjoyed spending time with Vivi's family family and like getting to know her town through like the little details that we got throughout this book. I will also say that the main male love interest isn't like super strong or memorable. I'm not going to like take an impression of him away from this book necessarily, but I really enjoyed how he slotted into this book. I think that there were a lot of ways that this could have veered off into him being a jerk territory, but he wasn't. He was just kind of like a normal guy, I don't know, trying to do his best, doing his version of his best, and like who really cared for the main character, but kind of getting their wires crossed in terms of what they wanted and like committing to the things that they wanted. So it was really sweet. I read it relatively quickly and I was engrossed the whole time. So yeah, 3.5, maybe 4 out of 5 stars. And that's it. That's the end of this week's reading vlog. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of the books that I mentioned or any of the ones that are like on my cart that you're like, Maddie, pick that one up next. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you guys soon.